Three, two, one. Okay, we're good to go.
All right. Well, so a question that you may not have considered or thought about is AI just the bailiwick or province of big corporations? Is it urban environments? How does it come to play elsewhere? Well, that's actually what we're going to dive into today. How does AI even show up of all places in rural land development? So, welcome again to another edition of AI Insights with software guru and AI expert Steven Bowman and me, Mike Russell. And let's jump right into that, Stephen. So we're talking rural real estate development, rural land development. It's kind of like, my first thought was when you brought this up is, are we going to be talking about robots digging ditches? I mean, what's going on here? What are we talking about?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I had similar thoughts. So I met with a friend of mine. We've known each other for 3, 4 years now, and we've talked about different avenues in business. We've talked about different solutions, sometimes technological, sometimes not. And he calls himself a rural real estate developer. So just to give you an overview of what he does and what his business looks like,
Mhm.
um, he takes large tracts of land. So the one that he's working on right now is 88 acres. And he splits them up, breaks them up into smaller plots. Sometimes he sells those plots. Sometimes he uses a concept called forced appreciation, where he brings in amenities, electricity, puts a well in, puts sewer or septic in, puts in roads. In some places, there's no roads or no way to
Infrastructure,
actually.
basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right. He's putting in infrastructure. And then if you know anything about real estate and appreciation, right, as you add amenities, as you add infrastructure, you can then have the properties reappraised, they appraise for more value, um, essentially generate paper wealth. And then you can use that paper wealth to draw against to build or flip or do whatever it is that you want to do. In his case, he actually runs a series of homes, Airbnbs, and he also rents out facilities for RVs on some of these properties. So he's brought in electricity, he's brought in fresh water, he's brought in sewer, and he's got all of the hookups for those RVs. Very private area. It's not like a KOA, it's not like a campground. Although, while it feels like a campground, it's very private. And in talking to him, um, I said, have you thought about using AI in your business and furthering your business? And of course, the
Mhm.
the reaction was very similar, like, well, how's AI going to help me with the problems that I'm facing? And I said, well, let's talk about the problems that you're facing. And of course, with
Right.
every business, he wants more revenue. So I started talking to him about what kind of issues he's running across in revenue. And the very first thing that we came up with right off the bat, no questions asked, was he's got a website. Everybody in the universe has a website. And instead of expecting his prospects and clients to dig through the website and click 5 times, we put a chat bot, an AI assistant, a digital assistant with a wide open box that says, hey, if you're looking for a property, I've got great options. Would you like me to help you find one? And then that becomes a conversation. Right now it's typing in chat. I mean, there's a microphone button, they can use it, but it becomes iterative. It becomes conversational in nature rather than someone trying to hunt and peck and dig for the details that they're looking for. So first and foremost, increase the user experience, increased retention time on the website, increase the number of page views. All of that comes from simply implementing an FAQ style digital assistant directly on the homepage, first and foremost. So the next thing that we talked about,
So
and
before you
his,
go to the next thing,
yeah, sure.
so from a revenue perspective, the initial or maybe the main thing out of that is what? Revenue acceleration. In other words, if I have my 80 acres and I'm breaking it up into, say, well, we'll just call them 1 acre tracts, right? It gives me 80 1 acre tracts. So if I can help somebody or get the whole idea of getting the traffic, go back to the traffic triangle, right? The traffic
Yep,
and then
yep.
conversion, in other words, making the sale, you're shortening the time to the sale by tailoring faster, I would guess, rather than just like you said, rather than just the bland experience of somebody looking at set stuff, is you're actually tailoring to what they want as far as making the sale tailored before they even talk to somebody, right?
Before they talk to somebody, he doesn't have to get on the telephone and answer questions as much. Just as importantly, I think it's getting people access to what they want faster. It's all
Right.
about ease of use for the end user. And so the numbers, this has been 60 days. The numbers are better, but we're not sure if it's causality or not. But there is, and I'm saving this for the end here, there is a very direct increased revenue generation tie-in that we ended up going back on another iteration of that front page chat bot.
Okay, well, maybe it's going to be related to this question, right? So you said you confirmed what I was thinking, right? It's faster of the people getting to what they're interested in, right?
Yes,
Which then translates into revenue acceleration. Now,
absolutely.
maybe maybe the same, maybe different. So the iteration of the bot, which if this is tell me if you want to keep it to later, but so that's revenue acceleration. But what about new revenue? Is he discovering anything from the conversation, like, what people are interested in that helps him home in on maybe the next pieces of land to acquire or things that they're looking for, maybe different infrastructure or something like that?
So it's a great question. And so far, we haven't been able to actually glean much from the conversations or questions that we're getting from end users, prospects. But here's what we were able to do with it. So built into his platform, he also offers other amenities, services, and products while you're renting. So a good example of that is he also offers a four-wheeler with his RV rentals.
Oh, okay. So now right, so it's not, in this case, we're talking about the subcategory of the renting, like the RV spaces or camping or something like that. So I got it. So all the things that they might need or want or be interested in while they're at that spot, he now offers or can offer.
Not, not just they were offered all the time, but people weren't able to find them or find them easily. And instead, what we
Uh,
did was during the conversation with the bot, when we were able to identify, hey, you're a good candidate for an RV spot, that very first question is, would you like to add a quad to your rental, a four-wheeler to your rental?
Okay, all right. So this goes back to the fundamental fast food question of would you like fries with that, right? The whole thing
100%.
about, either sell the meal deal or, I mean, the question for years, the revenue, it worked like magic, right? Would you like fries with that? And most people said yes, right?
100%. 100%. Now, he offered these quad rentals, these four-wheeler rentals for the last 2 years. And very, very, very sporadically did he get any. I think he had 17 rentals in the last 2 years. And he's already got 7 in the last 30 days. And it's
Okay.
simply from exactly what you're saying. It's simply from just making them aware that there's an option and asking them, would you like fries with that? Would you like a quad rental? Would you? And there's all kinds of legal stuff, right? They have to sign paperwork and
Oh,
all that.
yeah,
It
right.
doesn't matter. It's all about the intent, asking them, would you like this? And I've got the ability to serve it to you, because what it turns out is in the original web page that had it, it was a little checkbox down in the bottom corner. And people went right over top of it
Sure.
constantly. They just never see it, right? Now we're asking them, again, it's conversational. Here's more options I can give you. Here's more options I can give you. Are you interested? And there's an immediate impact, immediate result for them.
So what are some of the other things he has on there? Like internet service or
Yeah,
something along those lines? I mean, obviously the electricity, I don't know if he provides that or if they still have to go to the county or whoever, but what other things does
provides it.
he is offered?
Yep. He provides it. Now there's additional, right? Just the idea of being able to have a conversation with a digital assistant and to open up new sales possibilities for what he can offer. This has got his brain on fire on coming up with new offers, new items, new upsells throughout that entire process. Some of the other things that he's thinking of right now is he's thinking about selling cleaning services. He's thinking about selling some type of food delivery. The list goes on and on and on. So again, it's once you know what's possible, then you can iterate based on what you think is important and test in your market. And maybe even more importantly, start asking for more feedback. What else can I get you? What else can I get you? And then use that as an opportunity to then sell and upsell everybody else that's downstream.
All right, so now we've gotten both, right? We've got revenue acceleration, right,
Yep.
making it faster, and now we've got additional revenue, increases without having to have additional customers, which is, another aspect to it. So I
Yep.
can imagine that, like you said, there's all sorts of things, particularly if somebody hasn't been, if they're new to the area, you can have tours, you can have experiences, right? So that's one of the big selling things these days is selling experiences, not just products and
Absolutely.
services. I can imagine he could come up with all sorts of things since his brain's on fire.
Absolutely. So one of his primary ways of marketing for this, I mean, obviously he's got his Airbnb and VRBO rental sites, and that's kind of bread and butter for him. But he's also doing a bunch of organic social media. In particular, he does Facebook and Instagram. And one of the problems that he's got is number one, he's a hardworking guy, so he's out in the field doing what he needs to do. But number two, he gets, I don't know, writer's block, social media creators block, if you will. And he starts to stumble a little bit on, okay, this is important to me. Is it important to my clients? Is it something that I should be showcasing, et cetera? And one of the things that we immediately went to was we went and found a custom GPT. We're using Chat GPT. We went and found a custom GPT, and it was an ideation bot, an
Mhm.
idea creator,
Right.
GPT. And he uses that when he needs to and says, hey, help me come up with 30 days worth of content for this. And he tells it a story, and out pops there. Anybody who's using AI and using the generative power of something like ChatGPT to generate stories, to generate content, generate snippets, and then he can run with it. It totally, like, he had heard all the stories, he'd seen all the stuff, right? He's getting advertisements for, oh, add AI to this, add AI to that, and he just kept blowing it off and blowing it off and blowing it off. And as soon as we found that GPT, told it a little bit of a story, I kind of coaxed him through, okay, give it more context, give it more details. But after that first iteration, his eyes were about as big as tea saucers. He couldn't believe that the quality of the ideas that came back to him on things to talk about. Of course, he gave it, right, location information, amenities nearby, amenities
Right.
of his facility, right? The context is super important here. He provided it with a lot of context, and he even told it, hey, I'm not very good at this, I'm a newbie, help. And of course it did. And right now he's sitting on about 90 days worth of social media content. Now they're small, less than minute clips because that's the format that he felt was most appropriate for his audience. But it doesn't change the fact that he's sitting on 90 days worth of content right now. He doesn't have to open that Pandora's box for another 90 days. Now, if you can hear the sound of my voice and you create content, then you know exactly what this poor guy has gone through in the past, where there'll be a time comes up when you think to yourself, I have to create content today, this week, this month, whatever it is. And I don't know if it's going to resonate. I don't know if it's going to fit. I've got writer's block. I've got 10 excuses. Using AI as a collaboration partner is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would think also that given the RV slots, do you know or the rental plots, so we'll just call them rental areas. So do you know the percentage of people from local versus not local that are using it by any chance?
It's super interesting. because that's a great segue into point number 3. And I called it data analytics, but we went away from ChatGPT because, as candidly as I can say this, ChatGPT can do data analytics, but I've found, my team brought it to me. We've found that Claude seems to have better analytic capabilities. The way that it analyzes data, the fact when you feed it multiple sheets, it seems to reference all the sheets together better, almost like one contiguous data set. Maybe it finds keys and I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to even guess on how their algorithm works. I don't have to. They've got that beautiful little black box working wonderfully. We took his data and we plugged it into Claude and said, this is what I think about the data. And he thought that it was mostly RV travelers, et cetera. And this glaring discrepancy in what he thought and what he found popped out in the data. And that's actually that a lot of his renters are within the tri-state area of where he's at, and they're tradespeople.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay.
So these
Basically
guys are
riding the circuit, so to speak, on doing work, coming
exactly.
around and around.
Exactly. Now, he's talked to some of these people personally and had interactions, but for whatever reason, he never clicked it together that if he opened up the area in which he's advertising in, that he figures he can get much better uptake. And again, what's your marketing message? Hey, you want a home away from home? Whatever it is, right? These are all things that he can then take once he's gleaned this information, this data, and actually gotten some semblance of what it really means that was different than his assumptions. He can now take this back to AI and write campaigns and write messaging, et cetera, to better tailor to his audience. And although when we saw that, I said, wait a minute, man, are these guys carpenters or whatever? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, his brain kicked up and he says, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that many people were working on a brand new factory that's being built about 30 miles away.
There you go.
He thought that they were all staying in the extended stay America up the way. So it's funny how we can, it's a really good example of how we can make assumptions about our data. We can make assumptions about our clients and our audience, and how just taking ourselves out of that equation, letting something else crunch the data a little bit for us and give us a suggestion can open up brand new possibilities. That was really what happened here. Really, really neat. Really just a great little project. Fun, really great to catch up with the guy again, see where he's at 60 days after we sat down the first time. We've been talking a little bit in between, but the epiphanies and this is where I'm at. It actually worked. I didn't think AI had any place in my life, and to find out that it did was pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And also in an area that, you wouldn't think you would be able to apply it, because you think of an RV rental or a piece of land sale, right? Other than maybe the servicers are using it. I don't even know about that, right? It's just
Right?
kind of mechanical, right? We've done it this way for how many years? I mean, and
Yeah,
now we've got a way to both accelerate revenue and also add revenue. I mean, again, it's the thinking about how to accelerate revenue and expand revenue isn't new. It's just that, as we said before, it's a great way to use AI to augment the thinking, right? Or to expand it, or like you said, third case of analyzing data so that it doesn't, so that we keep our predispositions or prior thinking out of the way, so we can see what's actually there. Right? It's that kind of
absolutely.
mental perception thing. If I only expect to see something, unless I got something to break the mold, that's all I'm going to see.
It's 100% correct. I was just talking to somebody else about this in a previous life, if you will. I built a lot of big data solutions, and back
But
in
what
my
does
day,
big data mean to you? Just to
yeah.
give the listening audience. So what are we talking about? Big data.
So I architected and built what we would call data warehouses. So what a data warehouse is, particularly for fixed income and insurance companies. So we would take all of the data that they had, or a large chunk of all of the data that they had. So maybe 15 years worth of data for things like policies, policy details, claims,
Mhm.
all, and I mean, in the data world, it was a lot. So in some cases, we were talking about terabytes of data. So on your hard drive, you probably got gigabytes, and you say, oh yeah, I can fit, whatever, 100 pictures or 200 pictures in a gigabyte. A terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, and we had some databases that were 50 terabytes. I mean, large, large, large volumes of data. And once we get it all in a data structure, we then build that data in a way that it's easy to report off of. And the reason
Mm.
why that's so important is because there's details, there's little nuggets of gold. We call it data mining. There's little nuggets of gold in that data somewhere. When you want to find out why, or what a subset of your customers, why they're behaving a certain way, or what they're doing to cause profit or loss in a particular area of your business, we were able to find data to help support that thinking or to disprove that thinking. And this brings me right to it, which is, most of those projects were large in scale, in size and scope. And that meant that we spent a lot of time with their executive suite members and CEOs and
Right.
CFOs, because those were the guys who really were in the data. And after a couple of iterations of this, we would have candid conversations with them, usually at dinner after the board meeting or whatever it was for approval. And the conversations would say, do you want me to find the truth, or do you want me to back up your assumptions?
Right.
So in this case, we had assumptions, but we wanted to find the truth. And being open-minded to what the data tells us really opens up the whole world for this guy. And it was refreshing to see that again, because I'd been kind of tainted by a fair number of CEOs who said, I know what's wrong and I need numbers to prove it.
Right. All right, well, let's transition to a continuing question, or I guess it's really sort of a set of questions around, and we'll probably end up coming back to this frequently around, should I get started? How do I get started? And there's also a strain that we were talking about before today's episode about, are people really paralyzed around AI? In other words, they just don't want to do anything with it? Is it more of they just don't know what to do next? Are they even interested at all? So what are some of the things that bounce around your head around that after the last week or two?
Great. Thank you. Great questions. So it's difficult for me to answer that definitively in one statement, right? Or in one, it's not a yes or no answer. This is every shade of gray that's out there, at least from what I'm seeing. But I'm actually curious to know more from other people. So I get a lot of marketing messages. So I may be a technologist, but a lot of the people that I hang out with are digital marketers or in that ilk, if you will. And I love marketing. I love the concepts of scarcity and urgency. And a lot of the marketing messages that I'm getting are, they've got a lot of scarcity and a lot of urgency in it. And I'm hearing this message. I'm hearing, oh, I talked to so-and-so and they're paralyzed in their decision making on what to do with AI. They don't want to screw up, or they don't want to make a bad investment, or they don't want to waste time. And I'm getting a slightly different vibe from some of the people that I'm talking to, where they're actually taking those first steps. So they're using ChatGPT on a regular basis. They're expecting their staff to use AI, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, on a regular basis. They're now experimenting with add-ons in their inventory management system or in their task management or project management systems, where it says, hey, powered by AI, would you like to try? They're using Grammarly, or right, they're starting to experiment with some of these tools. I'm not seeing that paralysis from the SMB market. And I think when you get above that, right, when you get into larger businesses, I think there's a lot of AI happening at the individual level, but maybe not at the department or company level yet. I think they're still evaluating. But I'm curious, are you seeing the same thing? Are you hearing the same thing? And if you are, is there a discrepancy between the market and the sales pitch?
Well, like you, I don't know. I mean, there's so much, for lack of a better way to put it, so much AI noise out there. I mean, I'm not talking about noise as in useless information. I'm talking about noise when a lot of things or a lot of people are talking at the same time and it becomes, indecipherable one thing from another, right? It's just a jumble of stuff. So there's everything. I've seen marketing all over the place, all the way from don't be, paralyzed, analysis paralysis, which, you always get some level of analysis paralysis when something's new, right? Depending if they tend towards analysis paralysis, well, AI is just another thing to have analysis paralysis about. The marketing, obviously, most of the time is scarcity in a sense, but it's scarcity from a different standpoint. You mentioned scarcity from a marketing perspective earlier. Usually it's like sale, oh, hurry, hurry. It's always, anytime I see hurry at the beginning of a ad statement, I'm just like, so, it's that hurry, and then of course next week it's the same thing. Hurry, this one ends Friday, and it's the same one. It's just recycled. That's being
Sure.
overly negative about marketing. But so the hurry bit here is more, and the scarcity, I think maybe it's just the way I've been thinking about it. It's more of don't get left behind, right? At least, check things for yourself, figure out what's for your business, and so on. If there's paralysis, I think it may be a combination of maybe three things at the moment, at least here in the United States. Well, let's say broadly, it's at least two things. One is AI. How does that affect? What's it going to do? Secondly, what's happening economically? Where are we in the cycles? What's happening? Maybe I shouldn't do anything at the moment, save money. In the United States, there's a third level on top of that, which is the election cycle.
Sure.
So there's three levels of uncertainty there, and it's all impacting AI. Excuse me. So is it an excuse to wait?
No, you're definitely onto something there from a standpoint of, right, a confused mind says no, a scared mind says no.
Yeah,
And
well, let's go back to that first one because I use that a lot too, right? Say it again.
a confused mind says no. Yeah, for sure.
Normally, right? Unless you power through it or do something.
Sure, sure. Uh, so one of the best books I've read in the last decade was Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Him and Dan Sullivan runs Executive Coach. They've got a whole defined coaching, or Dan Sullivan has a defined coaching program, business coaching program. Great stuff, great people. He partnered with Benjamin Hardy a while back. Dan quit writing books. Benjamin was into writing books, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's got a handful of them out there. Be Your Future Self Now is a good book by Benjamin Hardy, but my favorite from him, period, is Who Not How. And Who Not How outlines this concept as a business owner that, and I'm not suggesting that if you're a business owner, that you need to leave every detail of a given task or a project or whatever it is to somebody else and never look at it again. That's not what Who Not How is. But what Who Not How says is that there are specialists that you can bring in to perform activities for you so that you can concentrate more of your time on your zone of excellence, whether that's executive function, new products, working on your business instead of in your business, et cetera. And it's no different in thought than outsourcing. Outsource your application development, outsource your website development, outsource your marketing, right? These are not new concepts, but for some reason or another, I think a lot of people are so, like you said, there's so much noise, not that it's all negative, but there are so many competing voices right now that people, they don't know who to trust. And because of that, they can't even get to the point where they find somebody who can be their who. That way they don't have to know how to do every intricate detail. Again, that entire book, right, there's a whole series of books. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, if you're not familiar, and that strikes a nerve, please go read the books. They're wonderful. But again, I think that you have to have some base level of proficiency, in my opinion, before you can get to the point where you hand it off to somebody else. Otherwise, you're potentially putting yourself or your business in danger. And I think it's helping to get people to that base level of proficiency. If they're not there, then maybe that's where the paralysis comes in.
And, maybe it's another thing too, is that if I may not need a base level of proficiency, but I certainly need some base level of, well, I had a P word for alliteration and now I can't remember it. At least some level of literacy, let's say, so that you can talk in the same language if you're going to outsource or if you're going to delegate. And I love what you said earlier, right? This isn't giving somebody something and then just completely forgetting about it. From a business ownership standpoint, or the CEO or whatever, that's not a good idea. The idea is that, you're not abdicating, you're delegating, which
Right.
still means that there's responsibility for the person. There's some level of follow-ups. We've got a whole thing about that, about how to efficiently delegate. We can get into at some point. But the idea is that, that's what a lot of people equate it with. Oh, well, let me get this off my plate. And they just dump it and allocate it. I mean, abdicate it, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, dumping should be when you don't do something, right? Because there's that old 3D sequence, right? Which was, dump, delegate, do, and there's variations on it, right? As the first thing, does anybody need to do this? If not, dump it, right? Can
Sure.
somebody do this better than I can, or is it something that's not in my wheelhouse or I shouldn't be doing? Well, you delegate it, right? Which then leaves hopefully the small set of what you then do yourself. And I think that's part of what you're talking to. But again, to be able to delegate it, you got to know enough of the language to be able to talk to somebody so that they can effectively do what you want.
Absolutely.
And from a literacy standpoint, you also need some level of understanding to figure out, do you even want to mess with it at all?
Sure. Absolutely. It's interesting too, because again, kind of where we're at with the life cycle of adoption for AI, I think that there's a lot of smaller businesses that are willing to make that jump. And as you get into the little bit larger businesses, they're a little more leery. Hey, what we've got is working. We don't want to upset the apple cart too much. Maybe there's something we can dabble with, but that's where that who, not how comes in a little bit more, I think. The smaller businesses, a lot of them, at least in my experience, the owner operator is still actively working in the business. There's not necessarily those levels of delegation, as you just
Right.
said. And because larger businesses are still kind of sitting on the sideline, not quite ready to dive into some of these AI implementations, I think in the course of the next 3 to 6 months, the tech will catch up a little bit. And what I mean by the tech will catch up a little bit is I'm seeing a lot of trending toward making usage and onboarding and those first steps more readily easier to accomplish for anybody. And I think that that's going to help draw more people into using them. Right now, and even before now, a lot of the AI implementations are kind of cowboy-ish, if you will, in the way that it's kind of, okay, here's a piece of software and here's a Word document or a video. Feel free to go figure it out. And I mean, I understand why medium and larger businesses are on the sidelines, because that's risk for them. The smaller businesses, a lot of them, they're more inclined to take those risks, right? They want to make those larger jumps. A lot of medium and larger businesses are sitting on the sidelines saying, okay, we're quasi comfortable right now, and we'll wait for it to catch up. And it's catching up fast.
Right. So I think I've already gotten the idea that they shouldn't be completely waiting. Is there anything tripwire or indications to those bigger businesses that they should jump in? Now, obviously some have, right? I mean, we've seen in the papers about different companies doing things, or they say that they're investing heavily in AI and, adjusting employment and all those sorts of things. But those are probably fewer than most at this point. So what is it? How should somebody know when to go?
I'm not kidding. My gut feeling here is very strong, and it's the advice that I give businesses of this size whenever I talk to them, and that's that you now need a subsection of your IT budget to be allocated for AI. And you should be going department by department asking, what is your proof of concept for AI this quarter? And you don't have to break the budget, and it doesn't have to be 25% or anything silly. A small segment of money, a small segment of time, asking the people in the trenches to look for solutions and find AI-based solutions to the problems that they face every day, and you're going to get immediate ROI. 90 days from now, 180 days from now, your department is going to look at you and say, why didn't we do this sooner? And there's the funny thing is that there's solutions for almost every problem out there. And it's only the big concern that I have is, we've just said it, there's going to be more noise. So instead of having one option here in 2 years, you're going to have 7. How do you know which one's best?
Well, in some cases you have that now, right? In the
Yeah,
market space, you've got that now. You'll have
that's true.
several. But I love what you just said, right? Take a little bit and make it an objective for every area to experiment with it, right? So they
Exactly.
can, and just explicitly ask the question, which is gold. Is there a way that AI could help us solve this problem, whatever the problem is, right? And
Right.
a legitimate answer is also no. But
Right.
asking the question, as opposed to not asking the question, will yield that ROI, and getting more familiar with it to solve bigger problems in the future. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Once they, my gut feeling is, especially with business owners or whatever, management, right? Once they see, hey, wait a minute, I can save time with that solution. I can save money with that solution. You know as well as I do what the vast majority of them are going to start thinking next, which is, how do I use that to make money? So
Exactly.
those opportunities are there too.
All right. I think that's a great place to end this week, because that was such golden advice there for pretty much any size business, especially the bigger ones. And we'll see you again next episode. If you have any questions, you can always forward them to Steven or add it to the chat here. Thanks
Excellent.
again.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. See everybody. Okay.